Game development explained. No theory, just what works.
What if I told you that the reason your last big project failed wasn't because your team was incompetent?
Right. Or, because your project management software was outdated.
Exactly. What if I told you it failed simply because you and everyone you work with are just entirely too polite?
It sounds kind of crazy when you say it out loud like that.
It really does. But I want you, the listener, to picture a project you've been a part of recently. Maybe it was a massive software rollout at your company or a new product launch.
Or even something personal, right? Like redoing a kitchen.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
A home renovation is a perfect example. You start out with this pristine, unblemished plan. Everyone's sitting around a table smiling.
The milestones are set. The budget makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And then week by week, almost invisibly, it just starts to devolve.
Slowly at first, yeah.
And suddenly you wake up one Tuesday and you are in a chaotic, stressful, burning mess. You're completely off track, the budget is blown, and you're just looking around wondering, how on earth did we get here?
It is a profoundly universal experience, isn't it? I mean, you start with a meticulously drafted blueprint and somehow end up living inside a funhouse.
A funhouse where none of the doors lead to where they should.
Exactly. And the immediate reaction, which is basically a reflex in professional world now, is to blame the planning phase.
Oh, always. We sit in those grueling post-mortem meetings and we tell ourselves this really comforting lie.
Yeah, we say, well, we just need better estimates next time.
Right, or we need to be much stricter with our project management software.
Our crystal ball was cloudy, We just didn't foresee the complexities of the market.
That is the go-to excuse. We blame the tools or our inability to predict the future. We think if we just had a slightly better Gantt chart, everything would have been fine.
But our deep dive today is going to fundamentally rewire how you view this exact phenomenon.
It really is. We're looking at what the corporate world calls scope creep. And we are pulling from this incredibly insightful analysis by Leszek Lisowski.
Who is a veteran with, about 20 years in game production?
Yeah, 20 years. And his central thesis is titled, quite pointedly, Scope Creep Doesn't Happen Because You're Bad at Planning.
It represents this phenomenal, almost jarring perspective shift.
It really shook me when I read it.
Right. And while Lisowski's background is deeply rooted in video game development, which, is an industry completely notorious for massive delays and bloated scopes, the mechanics he describes are universally applicable.
So whether you are managing a complex B2B software implementation or, coordinating a global supply chain.
Or even just organizing a massive community fundraising event. His core insight applies to literally any environment where work is interdependent and where late changes carry a heavy cost.
And his mission for this piece, and our mission for this deep dive, is to just totally change your relationship with scope creep. He argues it isn't a failure of scheduling at all.
Not at all. It's a silent, creeping disease of decision-making.
Yes. We love to blame our planning tools when the real, insidious culprit is just human politeness. Now, I really want to spend some time unpacking this because that's a massive, totally counterintuitive statement.
It is.
Human politeness causing multi-million-dollar project failures. How does being nice destroy a timeline?
Well, it sounds totally paradoxical until you actually look at human psychology, specifically how we behave in a collaborative team setting.
Right.
To fix scope creep, we first have to stop misdiagnosing it. The traditional narrative, this sort of mythological scope creep story we all have in our heads, is usually imagined as this very dramatic top-down executive mandate.
Oh, yeah. We picture this cartoon villain CEO kicking in the door of the engineering department at 4:00 p.m. on a Friday.
Exactly. Demanding 3 brand new massive features by Monday morning.
Right. The unreasonable stakeholder throwing a grenade into the room and walking away. That's who we blame. But if we're honest with ourselves, that is rarely what actually happens day to day, is it?
Very rarely. I mean, sure, executive mandates happen, but they account for a tiny fraction of project bloat.
So what's the rest of it?
Instead, scope creep is almost always this slow, agonizing sequence of what we can call reasonable micro-yeses.
Micro-yeses. I love that term.
Right. It doesn't happen in a dramatic boardroom clash. It happens in a passing conversation in the hallway or on a quick Slack message.
Yeah, someone saying, hey, while you're in that code, sure, we can add that quick fix.
Or we'll just squeeze that minor design tweak in before launch. Or perhaps the most dangerous, lethal phrase in the entire lexicon of project management.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
It's small.
It's small. Or let's stay flexible. I will admit, I have said that exact phrase myself. Let's just stay agile and see what happens.
We all have. We've all been completely complicit in it. Because in the very moment that request is made, each one of those micro yeses feels entirely harmless.
It feels cooperative, right? You're being a team player.
Exactly. But this dynamic leads directly to a phenomenon called silent adoption.
Silent adoption. Let's linger on that phrase for a second because it's so evocative.
It really captures the essence of the problem.
It's like a random request just materializes out of thin air. Somebody adds a casual ticket to the software board, or a stakeholder casually mentions an expectation during a weekly check-in.
Or a senior VP makes an offhand comment about a feature they saw a competitor use.
Yes. And suddenly, as if by magic, it's just treated as an approved mandate. Nobody ever sat down and explicitly decided to fund it or schedule it. It was just quietly adopted into the family.
Exactly. And the psychological reason we allow this to happen is that making a firm, explicit decision requires friction.
Friction is uncomfortable.
Highly uncomfortable. It requires someone to step up and say no, or at the very least negotiate a painful trade-off. Politeness is the easiest, most frictionless delivery mechanism for project failure.
Because our modern corporate systems naturally make it much easier to politely add work to a pile than to sit down and have a difficult conversation about hard limits.
Precisely.
You know, I was trying to visualize how these micro yeses actually compound in real life. Because one yes doesn't sink a ship. And I thought of this analogy.
Okay, let's hear it.
So if you're listening to this, I want you to think about being at a restaurant with a good friend. You sit down and they order a large plate of French fries.
Classic.
Now, you didn't order any fries. You're trying to be good. But the fries arrive, they smell amazing, so you reach over and take one single French fry. Just one.
I mean, it's completely harmless. Your friend isn't going to yell at you for one fry.
Exactly. You justify it. You say, it's small. It's literally a fraction of an ounce of potato. Your friend genuinely doesn't care. It feels perfectly polite to just let it happen.
Right.
But imagine if you do that exact same action taking one small fry 50 times over the course of a 1-hour dinner.
Oh, wow.
You haven't just shared a quick snack. You have entirely consumed their meal. They are leaving the restaurant hungry. Scope creep is the silent theft of project capacity, one polite French fry at a time.
That is a phenomenal visualization. It perfectly captures the cumulative effect of things that are individually insignificant.
And it feels so innocent in the moment.
It does. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of why we do this, why we rely on that politeness instead of setting boundaries, it really comes down to the human instinct to seek the path of least resistance.
Which makes sense. We're wired that way.
Totally. Imagine you are in a status meeting. If a colleague suggests a small addition to the project, challenging them requires you to be the one who kills the mood.
Nobody wants to be that person.
Exactly. You have to be the one to stop the forward momentum. You have to raise your hand and say, hold on, how exactly does this affect our Q3 deadline?
Which immediately creates social friction. It makes you look like the difficult person.
Yes. The polite thing, the incredibly easy, socially rewarded thing, is to just smile, nod, and say, great idea, let's throw it on the board.
And our systems are literally built to facilitate that exact avoidance of friction.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about it. It takes maybe 2 seconds to click a button and create a brand new task in Jira or Asana or Monday.com.
Right. You type a headline, hit enter, and boom, it exists.
But it takes an hour to schedule a meeting, sit down with the product team, and have a difficult, mathematically grounded conversation about team capacity and resource allocation.
And human nature dictates we will always choose the 2-second button over the 1-hour argument.
Every single time.
So week after week, the project absorbs all these small, polite additions. But as the analysis points out, when that continuous absorption happens, the total scope of the project grows outward.
Right.
Absolutely nothing is ever removed to compensate. The team's physical and mental capacity stays the exact same.
And eventually, the bill comes due.
Yes. Reality collects the debt.
Reality collects the debt. That is such a chilling phrase because all these micro yeses, all these stolen French fries we talked about, they feel so socially acceptable and harmless in the moment.
They entirely bypass our analytical defenses.
They do. But what actually happens on the ground when that bill finally comes due? I want to transition here and really get into the anatomy of a project breakdown.
Let's hear it.
Like, what does it look like when a project finally buckles under the weight of all this politeness?
Well, the symptoms of this breakdown are excruciatingly painful. And unfortunately, they are incredibly common across almost every industry.
I think we've all felt them.
Yeah. The most obvious surface-level cost of scope creep is simply more work.
Right. The late nights.
Exactly. We have to work nights, we have to work weekends. But the deeper analysis reveals that the true costs are far more destructive than just overtime.
What are they?
The true costs are rampant rework, strategic drift, and the absolute destruction of something vital.
Yeah.
A fundamentally broken trust in the plan itself.
Broken trust in the plan. That's a very heavy, almost emotional phrase.
It is.
We usually talk about trust between people, right?
Yeah.
But trust in a plan, what does that actually look like on the ground for a team of developers or marketers or engineers?
It looks like an entire workforce quietly giving up on the big picture.
Oh, man.
Yeah. When a team is in the trenches and they suddenly realize that the major milestone they were working toward is massively bloated with all these undeclared silent additions.
Things they never formally agreed to build.
Exactly. They instantly recognize that the official deadline is a total fiction. They know it's mathematically impossible. So the plan becomes untrustworthy.
And once that happens...
The moment a plan becomes untrustworthy, organizational alignment completely dies.
So it's a cascading failure. If I don't believe the timeline is real, I just stop pulling in the same direction as the rest of the company.
Exactly. When the grand vision is revealed to be an illusion, people begin engaging in a behavior called optimizing locally.
Optimizing locally, what does that mean in practice?
Since the overarching plan is broken and the deadline is a joke, individuals just put their heads down, put their headphones on, and do whatever granular task is immediately in front of them.
I see.
They optimize their own little isolated corner of the project, completely ignoring how it fits into the whole, because frankly, the whole is no longer coherent.
I have absolutely seen that happen. I can picture it vividly.
It's very common.
It's when you're in a cross-functional meeting and a massive launch is clearly falling apart, and you have team members crossing their arms and saying things like, well, the copy for the landing page is written, so my part is done.
Yep, not my problem.
Right. The fact that the payment gateway doesn't work isn't my problem. It's this defensive siloing.
That is the classic textbook symptom of a team optimizing locally. You see that along with half-finished initiatives scattered everywhere across the company.
Just a graveyard of half-done ideas.
Exactly. You see urgent last-minute requests constantly overriding whatever planned work was supposed to happen that week. And my personal favorite symptom.
Oh boy, what's that?
The endless, agonizing alignment meetings that consume hours of the day but produce absolutely zero closure.
Oh, the alignment meetings. If you are listening to this on your commute right now, think about your calendar today.
It's probably full of them.
How many recurring alignment meetings are you attending where everyone sits in a room, talks in vague circles for an hour, politely nods at a PowerPoint, and then goes right back to their desks to do exactly what they were doing before?
It's madness.
It really is.
It is madness, but it's entirely predictable because you cannot align a team to a broken plan. It's a structural impossibility.
Right, there's nothing solid to align to.
Which leads to one of the most brilliant metaphors in the source material. When a project reaches this state of broken trust, the official project roadmap, that beautiful chart that management loves to look at, transforms into a museum exhibit.
A museum exhibit. Okay, wait, I have to push back on this concept a little bit because I want to challenge this.
Sure.
Aren't roadmaps fundamentally supposed to be living documents? We hear that all the time in agile methodologies, right? It's a living document.
We do hear that a lot.
So if we are calling the roadmap a museum exhibit, doesn't that imply the project is already dead and we're just staring at its remains? Like, shouldn't a roadmap change and evolve as we learn new things?
It absolutely should change, but the key distinction is how it changes.
Okay.
A healthy roadmap changes through conscious, deliberate, negotiated decisions. It does not change through the silent, polite erosion we've been discussing.
I see the difference.
The museum exhibit metaphor is incredibly apt because it describes static history. Think about when you go to a museum and look at a dinosaur skeleton behind glass.
It shows you what used to be alive.
Exactly. It shows you what was. When teams lose trust in a bloated plan, the roadmap ceases to be a tool that guides future action. It just sits there on a shared drive, acting as an artifact of what the team originally planned to do before the chaos of reality took over.
Wow.
You could look at it through the glass, management can present it at quarterly reviews, but it has absolutely no bearing on what the engineers or designers are actually building on a Tuesday afternoon.
Wow. Okay, when you put it like that, it makes total terrifying sense. It ceases to be a map of the territory, and it just becomes this beautifully formatted spreadsheet of a corporate fantasy.
That's exactly it. It's a soothing artifact for executives to look at, but it is functionally dead to the people doing the work.
So if the symptoms of scope creep are this universally painful, if it inevitably leads to dead roadmaps, defensive silos, and endless soul-crushing alignment meetings, why do we keep doing it?
That is the big question.
This is the core mystery to me. If we're all so smart and if we've all read the management books, why do even the strongest, most highly competent teams constantly fall into this exact same trap?
That is the ultimate paradox that Lisowski's analysis highlights. It is a bitter pill to swallow, but often the most talented, well-meaning, good teams are actually the most vulnerable to this silent failure.
Wait, more vulnerable? That seems totally backward. Why would a highly competent team fail worse at this?
Because they care.
They care.
They genuinely want to help the company succeed. They are highly collaborative, empathetic people by nature. A highly competent, empathetic team player doesn't want to shut down a colleague's enthusiastic new idea.
Oh, I see. They want to be helpful.
Exactly. They want to be viewed as agile, accommodating, and brilliant problem solvers. They think, we're smart, we can figure out how to squeeze this in.
Right. We're a great team, we can handle it.
And that very strength, that collaborative empathy, becomes their fatal Achilles heel. It blinds them to the math of capacity.
That is fascinating. So to break this down, the framework outlines specific, highly recognizable triggers that cause this breakdown, even in the absolute best teams.
Yes, there are 5 main triggers.
I want to spend a good chunk of time going through these triggers because this is the diagnostic part of our deep dive.
It's crucial for identifying the problem in real time.
Right. If you, the listener, can recognize these triggers in your own daily work, you can actually start to fight back. So let's start with the first major trap, which is how we use language to disguise the size of our requests.
Yes. We touched on this a bit earlier with the concept of the micro yes, but it goes deeper into how politeness actively masquerades as scope.
Okay, tell me more about that.
In a corporate environment, when a stakeholder or a manager comes to you and says, hey, this is just a small change, what they're really saying in psychological code is, I do not want to negotiate the trade-off for this request.
Wow.
They're deliberately using the word small to bypass the friction of a formal decision. By labeling it small, they place the social burden entirely on you.
Because if you push back on a small thing, you are the one being difficult.
Exactly. You become the bottleneck.
I don't want to negotiate the trade-off. That hits so close to home, it's a linguistic trick.
It absolutely is.
It's so much easier for me to just agree and absorb the pain than to argue with a VP about whether adding a new reporting dashboard is truly small. It's almost a form of corporate gaslighting.
That's a strong way to put it, but it's not entirely inaccurate.
Okay, so that's the social aspect. But what about the technical side? Because I've noticed our tools actually seem to encourage this behavior too.
That brings us directly to the next major trigger, which is the tool illusion. This is a massive vulnerability in our modern, highly digital workplaces.
As so?
We have equipped our teams with these incredibly sophisticated, visually stunning project management boards, Jira, Trello, Asana, you name it.
They look very official.
They do. And what happens is someone has an idea and they drop a new feature request onto the board.
Yeah.
It looks highly official. It automatically gets assigned a ticket number. It's formatted nicely with a little colored tag.
Right.
Therefore, the human brain looks at it and automatically assumes, well, it's in the system, so it must be part of the official approved plan.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. I was thinking deeply about this tool illusion, and it instantly reminded me of the psychology of online shopping.
Oh, that's a great connection. Let's explore that.
Think about a digital shopping cart, like on Amazon or any e-commerce site. Just because you put a massive $3,000 75-inch flat-screen TV in your Amazon cart, does that mean you actually bought it?
No, of course not.
Does it mean you checked your checking account balance, negotiated with your spouse about the budget, and cleared space in your living room?
Not at all. It requires absolutely zero commitment. It just means you clicked a single frictionless button while browsing.
Exactly. But let's dig into the friction of the actual checkout process on that website. To actually buy the TV, the system forces friction on you.
Right, you have to go through several steps.
You have to navigate to the cart, you have to enter your CVV code, you have to confirm your shipping address, you are forced to look at the final total, including tax and shipping.
It makes you confront the reality of the purchase.
Yes. That friction forces a definitive decision. Am I parting with my money or not? But in business, a ticket thrown into a project backlog has zero checkout friction.
None whatsoever.
It is often immediately treated as a fully funded, fully approved purchase by the team. The software tool makes it look real, so we treat it as real, even though no actual transaction, no hard decision about capacity has ever taken place.
Right.
We have a backlog full of unpurchased 75-inch TVs, and the engineers are frantically trying to build them all.
That is a phenomenal extension of the analogy, and it perfectly captures the danger.
It's wild when you think about it.
The digital board makes it incredibly easy to add more, just like the e-commerce cart makes it easy to add items. The platform's goal is to reduce friction.
But an item in a digital cart isn't a purchase.
And a ticket on a Kanban board isn't a commitment. Yet the tool creates a powerful psychological illusion of commitment. It tricks the team into thinking a decision has been made simply because data was entered into a database.
It's terrifying when you realize how much of our work is driven by that illusion.
It really is.
Okay, let's look at another trigger. What happens when the leadership team itself refuses to make a decision and they just tell the team that everything is critical?
You're talking about priority ambiguity. This is a critical failure of leadership under pressure.
I feel like I've lived through this one many times.
Most of us have. If executive management stands up in an all-hands meeting and says, listen, every single feature on this roadmap is a top priority for Q3.
Which they love to do.
They do. But when they say that, the entire concept of priority order loses its actual mathematical meaning. If everything is number one, then nothing is number one.
That makes perfect logical sense.
And when that vacuum of clarity occurs, prioritization doesn't stop happening. It just devolves into a political game.
How does that work?
It becomes a system based entirely on volume and noise. The department head who complains the loudest, or the stakeholder with the most political clout in the company, gets their silent, unapproved change adopted first.
Because there's no objective rank list for a project manager to point to and say, no, your feature is rank 14, we are working on rank 3.
Exactly.
If everything is priority 1, the most aggressive person wins. That is a recipe for a toxic culture.
Precisely. It punishes the quiet, focused workers and rewards the loud disruptors.
That's the worst.
Which feeds directly right into the next trigger. And this is a subtle but absolutely vital distinction to understand.
Ownership gaps.
Ownership gaps.
Okay.
In almost every project management system on Earth, tasks have assignees. We're very good at assigning the doing of the work.
Right. John gets the ticket.
Exactly. John is assigned to write the code. Sarah is assigned to design the graphic. But the actual decisions regarding the existence of that work often have absolutely no owners.
Wait, let me make sure I'm grasping this. So John is explicitly assigned as a developer who has to code the new button on the website.
Yes.
But nobody in the entire company is explicitly assigned as the owner of the decision to include that button in the scope of the project in the first place.
Exactly. We track the labor, but we do not track the authority.
Wow.
And without a clearly defined decision owner, there is no human being whose job it is to enforce the boundaries of the project. There is no bouncer at the door of the club.
It's just an open door policy for feature requests.
Which makes the team completely defenseless against the final, most chaotic trigger of all, late pressure.
Late pressure. That sounds like the last 2 weeks of every project I've ever been on.
It's incredibly common.
The deadline is looming, the marketing campaign is already paid for, and suddenly a massive wave of urgent feedback rolls in from stakeholders who haven't looked at the project in 3 months.
Yes. And because of the late stage of the game and the immense crushing pressure to just get the thing out the door, that stakeholder feedback is passively absorbed by the team rather than actively processed.
They just panic.
People go into complete panic mode. They just frantically try to cram the changes into the build to appease the executives without ever stopping to mathematically evaluate what that new work does to the timeline or the quality of the product. They just absorb the blow.
Okay, so looking at all these triggers we just discussed, politeness masquerading as scope, the illusion of digital tools, the ambiguity of everything being a priority, the gap in decision ownership, and the passive absorption of late pressure. What does this all mean when you step back and look at the whole system?
If we synthesize these triggers, a glaring, undeniable pattern emerges. They are all, at their core, shortcuts.
Shortcuts.
Every single one of these behaviors is a human shortcut designed to bypass the friction of decision-making.
And as we establish, Humans love to avoid friction.
Basic human nature dictates that if a workflow contains a shortcut, we will inevitably take it. We will always take the path of least resistance, especially when we are operating under time pressure and stress.
Right.
The fundamental flaw is that our standard corporate workflows are designed to passively accept changes without ever forcing a moment of clarity.
So we've completely misdiagnosed the disease for decades. We sat in those postmortems and thought we were just bad at estimating time.
We thought we needed better Gantt charts or more extensive consultants.
But really, our workflow is just too polite. It's a nightclub with no bouncer, allowing uninvited changes to bypass the line and sneak right onto the dance floor. And then we wonder why the club is over capacity and the fire marshal is shutting us down.
That is exactly it. We are fighting a psychological battle using scheduling tools, and that is why we lose.
Man. Okay, so if that's the diagnosis, how do we cure it? How do we actually fix this without turning our companies into slow, bureaucratic nightmares?
That's the million-dollar question.
How do we disarm these deeply ingrained triggers? The source material offers an antidote, a framework called the anti-chaos loop. And what I absolutely love about this solution is that the author outright admits, right up front, that the fix is incredibly effective precisely because it is incredibly painfully boring.
It is the absolute definition of unglamorous. It is blue-collar project management.
No flashy apps required.
Nope. You do not need to buy a new, expensive enterprise software suite. You do not need to take your team on a trust-building retreat in the woods. What you need is rigorous decision hygiene.
Decision hygiene. I like that.
And the overarching rule for this hygiene is broken down into a simple mantra. Slow down, write it down. Work your workflow.
Slow down, write it down, work your workflow. Now, I have to play devil's advocate here because I can already hear thousands of people listening to this, especially founders in the tech startup world, screaming at their speakers.
I can hear them too.
Yeah. But what about agility?
Exactly. We have to move fast. Our competitors are shipping daily. If we slow down to write everything down, we lose our edge. Does this rigorous, boring process actually kill a team's agility?
It's the most common pushback you hear, and the source addresses that exact fear head-on.
And what's the verdict?
No, it absolutely does not kill agility. You can still pivot your strategy. You can still change your mind based on new market data. What this process kills is the toxic pretense that a pivot or a change is free.
Ah, the illusion that it costs nothing.
It kills the silent commitment. True business agility means making fast, clear, conscious decisions. It does not mean just letting chaotic changes happen to you and hoping for the best. Stop pretending the change is free. I love that. Okay, let's get into the actual practical steps of this anti-chaos loop because I want our listeners to be able to use this tomorrow morning. Step 1 is all about writing.
Right. Step 1. Write the change in plain, unambiguous language. And there are incredibly strict, almost draconian rules here.
How strict are we talking?
The request must be written in exactly one sentence.
Just one sentence?
No paragraphs, no bulleted lists of vague ideas.
No.
One sentence. And within that sentence, there is an absolute non-negotiable ban on what we call vague verbs.
Vague verbs. Give me some examples of what is banned. What are we not allowed to say?
You cannot use words like improve, optimize, enhance, revamp, or streamline.
Oh, you just banned 90% of all corporate speak? That's the entire vocabulary of a marketing department.
Exactly, and for good reason.
Yeah.
For example, if a change request is submitted that says, we need to improve the user onboarding experience, the source argues that is fundamentally unacceptable.
It's too fuzzy.
It's an illegal request. A developer reading that has no idea what improve actually means. A good acceptable sentence under this framework would be, add a new mandatory onboarding step that requires users to connect their bank account before they can take their first action.
Wow. It has to be that specific. It has to describe the actual mechanical change.
Yes, because this step is governed by a golden rule. If it cannot be written clearly, it cannot be scheduled safely.
That makes a lot of sense.
The profound logic here is that if a stakeholder cannot articulate the exact change in a single, concrete, mechanical sentence, it means they do not actually understand what they are asking for yet.
They have a vibe, not a feature.
Exactly. They have a vibe. And if you don't fully understand the request, you cannot possibly assess its impact, and therefore you cannot safely accept it into your project timeline.
Okay, I'm going to push back here again on behalf of our listeners because everyone is drowning in work. We are all busy. The author himself admits that forcing people to write this out is overhead. It adds friction. Does forcing a stressed-out product manager or a frantic VP of sales to slow down and craft one perfect, highly specific, grammatically constrained sentence really save a multi-million-dollar project?
That's the question, isn't it?
Or does it just add annoying bureaucratic red tape when teams are just trying to execute and get things done?
It's a very valid objection, but we have to completely reevaluate what we mean when we say team is moving fast. The source counters this objection by drawing a hard, bright line between motion and progress.
Motion versus progress.
Most teams, quite frankly, are not moving fast. They're just incredibly busy. They are generating a lot of heat, but not a lot of forward light.
Oof, not fast, just busy. That stings.
It stings because it's the truth for so many of us. A fast, chaotic sprint into rework, meaning a team building something very quickly based on a vague request, only to find out 3 weeks later that it wasn't what the stakeholder actually wanted.
And now they have to tear it down and build it again.
Exactly. That is not speed. That is waste. The author brilliantly refers to that kind of frantic, unstructured work as noise with a deadline.
Noise with a deadline. That is brutal, but it is so painfully accurate. I've been on projects that were nothing but noise with a deadline.
We all have. So the writing step isn't about creating documentation just for documentation's sake. The small, momentary pause required to write that one specific sentence forces clarity at the absolute beginning of the process.
When it's cheapest to fix.
It forces specificity when the cost of being wrong is still incredibly low. If you figure out you disagree on what improve means while you're writing a sentence, it costs you 5 minutes of argument.
Right.
If you figure it out after 3 weeks of coding, it costs you tens of thousands of dollars. A small pause that prevents massive downstream ambiguity is the true definition of speed.
So forcing the VP to say, add a step to connect the bank account instead of improve onboarding literally stops the design team, the back-end team, and the front-end team from building 3 entirely different things because they all interpreted the vague word improve differently.
Exactly. Crystallizes the request. It makes the phantom idea real so it can be evaluated in reality.
Okay, so step 1 makes perfect sense. We've slowed down, we've written our one perfect concrete sentence without using the word synergy or optimize.
Right.
But that's just the setup. The source says the real magic and the real interpersonal friction happens in step 2. This is where the rubber meets the road and someone actually has to make a hard call.
Yes.
We have to introduce the concept of the decision owner.
This is the critical step that almost every modern team skips. Remember earlier when we diagnosed the ownership gaps trigger?
Yes, tracking the labor, but not the authority.
This is the direct cure for that. You must forcefully separate the roles on your team. You have the doers, the highly skilled people responsible for actually implementing the work, and then entirely separate from the execution, you have the decision owner.
And just to clarify, the decision owner isn't just the unlucky person who gets fired if the project goes south, right? They aren't just a scapegoat.
No, and that is a vital culture-defining distinction. The decision owner isn't a single point of blame. They are a single point of closure.
A single point of closure.
Their sole responsibility in this workflow is to ensure that a definitive, unambiguous yes, no, or maybe is formally reached and communicated.
Yeah.
They are the bouncer at the door.
But let's be honest about human nature. Nobody wants that job.
Of course they don't. What's absolutely fascinating here is the social psychology behind why everyone actively dodges being the decision owner.
Because it's socially risky.
It's because true ownership means you have to absorb the social heat of making trade-offs. You have to be the one to look a senior executive or a passionate colleague in the eye and say, I hear you, but we cannot do that right now.
Which goes against all our polite instincts.
Exactly. By explicitly naming a decision owner, you force all the conflicting incentives and hidden agendas out into the open very early in the process. You force the conflict to happen while it's just a conversation in a meeting room.
Rather than letting it fester and explode late in the cycle when the project is literally on fire and people are missing weekends with their kids.
Precisely.
I can feel the anxiety of that just talking about it. So if a team is too polite or too scared to assign a decision owner, what actually happens to that one sentence change request? Where does it go?
It falls into what the source so accurately calls a trap.
A trap. I love a good corporate acronym. What does TRAP-HE stand for in this context?
Well, it's not an acronym. It's more of a conceptual psychological trap that ensnares the whole team. A change request that enters a system without a designated decision owner suffers a very specific, miserable life cycle.
Tell me about this life cycle.
First, it is implemented by whoever happens to be free at the moment. Usually a junior developer or a designer who doesn't know they're allowed to say no.
Oh, the poor junior developer.
Second, once it's built, it is fiercely defended by whoever spent their precious time working on it, entirely because of the sunk cost fallacy.
They spent 3 days on it, so now it must launch.
Right. And finally, it is completely orphaned when it inevitably fails or breaks the system because literally nobody officially owned the decision to build it in the first place.
Wow. Implemented by the free, defended by the invested, orphaned by all.
It's sad, but true.
That is a perfectly tragic description of how unowned work destroys a team's morale. So the mere presence of a decision owner prevents the TRAP from forming.
It does.
And the way they do this is by being forced to choose from 4, and only 4, minimum viable options when presented with a change. What are those 4 options?
The decision owner must look at the specific sentence and explicitly declare one of 4 paths.
Okay, number 1.
1. Accept. This means we fully formally commit to doing it.
Okay, straightforward.
2. Reject. This means we explicitly formally declare we will not do it and we kill the idea permanently.
Also clear.
3. Defer. This means it is a good idea, but not right now. It is parked to return for review at a specific later date.
The polite, maybe later.
Exactly. But the 4th option, the absolute backbone of this entire scope control methodology, is swap.
Swap. SWAP. Explain swap to me, because this seems to be the linchpin of the whole theory.
Swap is the operationalizing of reality. It means the decision owner says, yes, we commit to adding this new change. But in order to do so, we must formally remove or delay something else of equal size from the current plan.
If we add this, we must remove that. It's a zero-sum equation.
Exactly. The source states a stark, mathematically undeniable truth about project management. Acceptance without swap is just a polite way to fail.
Acceptance without swap is a polite way to fail. Okay, I need to use an analogy here because the swap concept is so foundational and I want to make sure we are grounding this in a way that feels visceral.
I love analogies. Lay it on me.
Let's think about physical space instead of abstract project capacity. Think about a closet in your house.
Okay, a coat closet. I'm with you.
Let's say it's the middle of winter and your hallway coat closet is 100% full. Every single wooden hanger is taken. Every square inch of the floor space has winter boots on it. It is at maximum physical capacity.
It's stuffed.
Now, you go out shopping and you buy a massive, heavy, gorgeous new winter coat. You bring it home and you want to put it in that specific closet.
Well, you have a problem.
The undeniable laws of physics dictate that if the closet is full, an old coat must be removed to make room for the new one. Matter cannot occupy the same space.
Right. It's an undeniable physical constraint. You can't debate physics.
Right. You can't just keep politely stuffing heavy coats inside, ignoring the physics of the space, leaning your weight against the door to get it to click shut,
We've all tried that.
and then act shocked and betrayed when the hinges on the door violently burst and everything spills out onto the floor in a tangled mess.
No, you can't be surprised by that.
Swap is simply taking the undeniable laws of physical capacity and applying them to the invisible world of project management.
That's a great way to think about it.
Just because a team's capacity is invisible doesn't mean it's infinite. Swap makes scope management realistic rather than binary.
Exactly.
It shifts the conversation from a combative do it or don't do it to a collaborative we can absolutely do it, but what old coat are we taking out of the closet to make room?
That analogy perfectly, elegantly captures the reality debt we talked about at the very beginning of the show. A team's mental capacity, their work hours, their energy, it is just as finite, just as bounded by physics as that physical closet space.
But we ignore it.
We just pretend it isn't finite because we can't physically see it. The swap mechanism violently forces you to acknowledge the rigid boundaries of your capacity.
It makes the invisible visible.
And if we unpack the psychology of the 2IPO further using your analogy, think about what happens when the project inevitably slips.
Okay.
When the team kept politely stuffing coats into the closet until the door blew off the hinges. What happens in the post-mortem meeting the next week? What does the team always say?
They say, we should have aligned earlier.
Yes.
Oh, every single postmortem, it was an alignment issue. We just weren't aligned. It's the ultimate corporate cop-out.
But the source points out a harsh, uncomfortable truth that shatters that excuse. Alignment is a decision.
Say more about that.
We treat alignment like it's a magical, warm feeling of consensus that just organically drifts down from the sky if we sit in enough meetings together.
Like it's a vibe.
It isn't a vibe. Alignment is a hard, conscious choice to agree on trade-offs. And without a decision owner stepping up and forcing a swap, actual alignment is a mathematical impossibility.
Because you are trying to politically align your team to a physical impossibility.
Exactly. You are trying to agree that 50 coats can fit into a 40-coat closet.
That is so true. You can't align on defying the laws of physics. You just have to make the painful decision about which 10 coats are going to be driven to goodwill.
Precisely. The swap forces the goodwill decision before the hinges break.
Okay, this is incredibly clarifying. So we have step 1, the clear one-sentence change request with absolutely no fuzzy verbs. We have step 2, the brave appointed decision owner who is willing to take the social heat and force a swap.
Yep.
But how do we ensure this actually survives contact with reality? Because teams are messy. Slack is going off constantly. Emails are pouring in. Executives are panicking. How do we operationalize this so it doesn't just become another forgotten management fad?
That brings us to the final piece, step 3.
All right, what's step 3?
Step 3 is about pushing the change through a rigid workflow, not just dropping it into a frictionless backlog.
Right, this is how we defeat the Amazon cart tool illusion we talked about earlier. We have to introduce friction.
Exactly. A change request cannot just bypass security and walk onto the factory floor. It must pass through specific mandatory gates.
What do those gates look like?
They include a priority alignment check, a milestone impact assessment, a brutal capacity reality check. Can the closet actually hold it? And finally, a strict shared definition of done.
And to make this actionable, because let's be real, nobody wants to fill out a 10-page form for every small change. The author provides what he calls a 10-second template.
Yes, it's incredibly streamlined.
It's so incredibly simple. You can literally write it on a Post-it note or type it into a single Slack message. What is the anatomy of this template?
It is stripped down to just 5 essential lines.
That's true, though.
Line 1, the change. This is your one concrete sentence from step 1.
And no vague verbs.
Right. Line 2, the decision owner. A specific human name, not a department.
Like John Smith, not the marketing team.
Exactly. Line 3, the decision. Accept, reject, defer, or swap.
Okay.
Line 4, if swap, what specifically moves out?
Crucial step.
And finally, line 5, the definition of done. How do we mathematically prove this is finished?
That's it. Just those 5 lines.
That is it. And as the author astutely notes, the physical format of this template isn't the point at all.
It's the process.
It truly doesn't matter if you write this on a neon pink sticky note and slap it on a monitor, or if you pin it to the top of a digital Jira ticket, or if you mandate it at the top of your weekly meeting notes. The gate is the point.
The friction.
The momentary friction required to fill out those 5 lines is the point.
It forces the necessary pause. It forces the team to snap out of autopilot.
It forces the pause. Now, as part of implementing this workflow, the source makes a final critical distinction that I think trips up almost every corporate team out there.
Oh, what's that?
It's the semantic difference between values and priorities.
Ooh, yes. I was hoping we would get to this because this blew my mind when I read it.
It's profound.
The piece says, quality, stability, and growth are values. A priority is a ranking. I want you, the listener, to think about how often we proudly stand up and call a core organizational value like, let's say, platform stability, a priority, just to avoid making the agonizing choice of actually ranking it against something else, like a shiny new feature launch.
We do it constantly. It is, in fact, just another form of professional politeness.
It really is.
It's another cognitive shortcut. It sounds fantastic and noble to stand in front of the board and say, uncompromising quality is our top priority.
Everyone claps.
But if you tell your engineering team that both quality and speed to market are your top priorities, you have utterly failed as a leader.
Because they conflict.
You haven't made a decision at all. You've just stated 2 conflicting desires. A value is a deeply held belief. A priority is a strict, unyielding mathematical ranking. A is above B. B is above C.
So if push comes to shove.
The real test of leadership is this. If push comes to shove on a Thursday afternoon and we are rapidly running out of time and money, do we sacrifice the launch of the new feature to maintain our server stability? Or do we risk the stability of the entire platform just to get the feature out the door on time?
That is the actual priority. The priority is what wins when 2 values go to war.
Yes. And the source gives a stark, terrifying warning here. If priorities are not made explicitly clear through strict ranking, then the scope of the project will simply be negotiated by volume and noise.
Negotiated by volume and noise.
Exactly.
The most aggressive, loudest person in the Zoom room wins the resources. That is the definition of chaos.
Exactly. Clarity is not an organic mood that you just hope strikes your team on a Tuesday morning after enough coffee.
We wish it was, but it's not.
Clarity is a strict, unnatural process that you must actively enforce through these gates.
To help our listeners enforce that clarity starting today, Lisowski provides a brilliant little diagnostic tool. It's a 2-question test.
Highly recommend using this.
If you are listening to this, you can take these 2 questions to your team stand-up meeting, or honestly, just ask them of yourself in the mirror, literally today, to see if you actually have control over the reality of your project. What are the 2 questions?
They are deceptively simple, but incredibly hard to answer.
Okay, question 1.
Question 1, what is the exact current scope of this project and what specific items did we consciously cut to get there?
Oof. And question 2.
Question 2, what is the strict rank priority order of our tasks and what specific human being owns that list?
Those are sharp. I love the second half of the first question. What did we consciously cut? If you ask your team that and the answer is, oh, we haven't really cut anything, we're doing it all.
You have a problem.
You have a massive ticking time bomb of a problem.
Precisely. If the answers to either of those questions are fuzzy, vague, or met with awkward silence, you do not actually have a scope problem. You have a profound clarity problem.
You have a clarity problem. Wow. Okay, let's take a breath and bring this all together. We have covered a massive amount of psychological and operational ground today, and I want to make sure the core transformative message of this deep dive really lands for you.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. Scope creep is not happening because you are inherently bad at guessing how long complex tasks take. You can stop beating yourself up about your estimating skills.
That's a huge relief.
Scope creep is the silent adoption of chaotic work, fueled entirely by professional politeness and a desire to avoid conflict. It is the danger of the micro yeses.
The stolen French fries.
Exactly, the slow theft of the stolen French fries. It is the inevitability of the heavy coats politely stuffed into a completely full closet until the hinges explode. To stop your projects and your team's morale from dying quietly in the dark, you have to stop accepting changes implicitly. You have to aggressively embrace the boring fix.
You have to embrace the boring fix that actually works in reality.
Slow down. Write the change down in one concrete mechanical sentence with no fuzzy verbs. Appoint a named decision owner who isn't afraid of the social heat. And above all else, demand a swap. If a new coat goes into the closet, what old coat comes out?
And this methodology applies to you, the listener, right now, regardless of your job title.
Yeah, you don't need to be a CEO to use this.
Whether you are managing a massive multi-year enterprise software migration with hundreds of developers, or you are literally just trying to organize the neighborhood summer block party with your neighbors, you now possess the vocabulary to spot the tool illusion.
Right, the Amazon cart problem.
You know deep down that a nicely formatted ticket on a digital board is not a blood oath commitment. You have the conceptual tools to stop those reasonable micro yeses from completely destroying your team's capacity. You can implement that simple 10-second 5-line template today.
It's so incredibly empowering to realize that you don't need a massive, expensive paradigm shift to save your projects. You just need a tiny bit of disciplined decision hygiene. You just need a bouncer at the door.
A bouncer at the door. I love that.
But before we officially wrap up this deep dive, I want to pivot slightly and leave you with a final, somewhat provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
We've spent this entire time talking about scope creep in the strict context of corporate projects, digital roadmaps, and software development. But I want you to think about the underlying logic of the anti-chaos loop and explicitly apply it to your own personal life.
That is a fascinating application.
Think deeply about your personal boundaries, your emotional bandwidth, and your mental health. How often do you accept a small change, your personal relationships, or your delicate work-life balance without ever forcing a swap? When a good friend asks you for a massive favor on an already packed, stressful weekend, or when your boss pings you and asks you to check your email just real quick on a planned vacation day, do you just give a polite micro yes?
Most people do.
Because you want to be a good friend. Because you want to be a team player.
It's that same politeness trigger.
What unseen heavy debt is reality currently collecting on your personal time right now? Simply because you were too polite and too eager to please to assign a strict decision owner to your own finite energy.
That is a profoundly challenging question to leave on. Because ultimately, your personal human capacity is just as finite and just as bound by the laws of physics as a multi-million-dollar project's budget.
Exactly. You are a closet with limited hangers. So the next time someone casually asks to squeeze just one more tiny thing onto your already full plate, whether at work or at home, remember the illusion of the digital tools. Remember the danger of the polite micro yes. Take a breath and force the pause and ask yourself, what am I consciously cutting to make room for this?
It's a great question to ask every single day.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
If this is useful, subscribe.
New breakdowns every week.